The night was cold, colder than it should have been for early fall. A thick fog rolled over the outskirts of a small suburban town, clinging to the sides of buildings and creeping silently along the sidewalks. Somewhere between the edge of the woods and an old crumbling garage, a faint whimper sliced through the silence. It was so soft, so timid, that it could have easily gone unnoticed. But it was there, a heartbreaking, trembling cry coming from a tiny, bruised German shepherd, puppy no older than 5 months. His name was Shadow, though he didn't know it yet. No one had ever spoken it to him with love. To the man who had taken him in months ago, who claimed to be a retired K9 trainer, he was only ever stupid, useless, waste of space. The man had purchased Shadow for cheap, thinking he could mold the pup into a working police dog and sell him for a fortune. But from day one, the man decided the puppy was a failure. Shadow had tried. Oh, how he had tried. His eyes, dark pools of innocence and longing, followed every move the man made. He learned to sit, to stay, to heal. He learned to anticipate the raised hand, the harsh words, the kick that came when he didn't move fast enough. But no matter how eager he was to please, how hard he tried to understand, the beatings came anyway, every single day. And tonight was no different. Earlier that evening, he'd failed a recall command during a training session. The man had thrown down his beer bottle, grabbed the puppy by the scruff of his neck and screamed so close to his ears that Shadow flinched violently and collapsed, trembling. That only made things worse. The blows rained down harder. A belt, a stick, anything within reach. Finally, the man had dragged the whimpering pup into the dark garage, thrown him into a box and slammed the door shut. That's where he was now, shivering in a cardboard box that reeked of oil and mildew, surrounded by rusting tools and forgotten car parts. His body was curled up as tightly as it could go, his head trembling uncontrollably. He couldn't stop it. Even when he closed his eyes, the shaking wouldn't stop. Pain radiated from his neck down his spine, a brutal reminder of what had happened when he tried to turn his head earlier, and the man decided to correct him for it. Hours passed. The fog thickened, and Shadow, cold and alone, whimpered again. It wasn't a cry for help. Not really. He had long since stopped believing anyone was coming. It was just the only thing he had left, his small, fragile voice. It was the sound of a soul that had been beaten but hadn't yet given up completely. Then, something shifted. The front gate creaked. A soft voice pierced the quiet. "Hello, is someone there?" Shadow froze. That voice, it didn't sound like anger. It didn't come with footsteps that stomped or bottles that shattered. It was soft, gentle, curious, almost kind. The voice came again. "I thought I heard something. Are you okay?" Shadow's heart pounded. He tried to raise his head to look but winced in pain. His body shuddered involuntarily. But then, light. A flashlight beam sliced through the darkness, sweeping across the dusty garage until it landed on the box. Wait. Oh my God. A woman, in her early 30s, kneeling at the threshold of the garage with wide, horrified eyes. Her name was Megan, a vet technician who had just finished a long shift and taken a shortcut home through the alley behind the property. She had stopped when she heard the whimper. Something in her gut, maybe the same thing that had driven her to work with animals, told her to check it out. And now, here she was, face to face with what looked like a shattered little soul in a fur coat. She dropped to her knees beside the box. "Hey, sweet boy, it's okay now. I'm not going to hurt you." Shadow's eyes barely moved. He didn't growl, didn't bark, didn't wag. He just lay there, limp and shaking. Megan reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small piece of leftover turkey jerky she kept for her own dog, Luna. Slowly, gently, she extended it toward the trembling pup. To her surprise, Shadow sniffed. Then barely tentatively, he licked it, and Megan felt something inside her crack wide open. "I've got you," she whispered, tears stinging her eyes. "I don't know what happened to you, baby, but I swear to you, you're safe now." She didn't wait. She reached into the box and gently lifted the broken puppy into her arms. He flinched at first, then went completely limp. The shaking continued, but he didn't resist. As Megan stood up and turned toward the street, she caught movement in the window of the house. A dark silhouette, watching. She stared back, cradling the pup tighter. "Shame on you," she muttered. Then she walked away. Shadow didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of everything changing. The beginning of safety, of warmth, of healing, the beginning of love. But the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Megan's arms ached as she clutched the broken little body to her chest, but she didn't care. The weight of the tiny German Shepherd pup was barely anything, no more than a bag of groceries. But the emotional burden he carried felt like it could crush the sky. The whole walk home he made no sound. He didn't struggle, didn't bark, didn't even cry. Only trembled. Silent tremors that pulsed through his limbs, up his spine, and settled in his eyes like ghosts. Megan's house sat at the corner of a quiet neighborhood wrapped in ivy and filled with rescued plants and, more importantly, rescued animals. She was the kind of woman who saw a lost cat on the road and pulled over, who carried extra food in her car just in case, who believed, knew, that sometimes the most broken souls were just waiting for someone to see them. As she stepped into her house, the familiar jingle of Luna's collar echoed through the hallway. Luna, her 4-year-old golden retriever mix, bounded toward the door with her tail wagging like a metronome of joy, until she saw what Megan was carrying. Megan knelt, keeping the new puppy close, but low, letting Luna sniff gently. Luna paused, her tail slowly dropping as she took in the scent of blood, fear, and oil. She let out a small, uncertain whine and backed away slightly, her big brown eyes locking with Megan's as if to say, "What happened to him?" Megan stroked Luna's head. "It's okay, girl, he's hurt. We're going to help him." The puppy didn't react at all. Not to Luna, not to the house, not to her voice. It was as if his spirit had gone somewhere far away, leaving only his body behind. She carried him into her guest bathroom, set him gently on a folded towel, and turned on the warm water in the sink. "You're safe now, sweetheart. Let's get you cleaned up, okay?" Her voice cracked as she said it, her throat tight with emotion. The water ran, the steam rising like prayers. As she examined him, she felt her stomach churn, bruises across his ribs, a welt on his left flank, one ear swollen, clearly from being struck. His neck, oh God, his neck. The muscle trembled constantly. Megan touched it gently and felt the puppy flinch hard, eyes snapping open in terror. She froze. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The vet tech in her kicked in. She needed to be clinical now, but it was impossible to separate her heart. She moved gently, cleaning his fur with warm water and a soft cloth. Blood washed away in thin crimson. Streams and the smell of motor oil faded, replaced by lavender shampoo. She dried him carefully with a towel, trying to avoid as many bruises. Only once did the puppy make a sound, a low, broken whimper that sounded like something between a cry and a plea. When she wrapped him in a fleece blanket and finally sat down beside him, Megan looked into his eyes. "You don't even know how brave you are, do you?" The puppy blinked slowly. For the first time, his eyes stayed on her face. "I think your name is going to be Chance," she whispered. "Because you deserve one, a real one." That night, Chance slept on a small dog bed next to Megan's own bed, swaddled like a newborn. She barely slept. Every time he shifted, she woke. Every time he whimpered, she whispered soothing words. When morning came, he was still there, breathing, sleeping deeply for the first time in who knows how long. By 8 a.m., she was at her veterinary clinic. The staff gathered in a quiet corner room while she gently laid Chance on the table. "Jesus," her co-worker David said softly. "What happened to him?" "Abuse," Megan said, her voice clipped with anger. Severe, prolonged. He's got a tremor in his neck, probably neurological, and he's terrified of sudden movement or sound. They worked on him together, scanning for internal damage, x-raying the neck, running blood work. The x-rays revealed muscle inflammation and signs of repeated trauma, but miraculously, no fractures. His neck tremors, they suspected, were likely due to nerve damage or trauma-induced anxiety. He might improve, the clinic's lead vet, Dr. Camilla, said gently. But even if he doesn't, that doesn't mean he can't be happy. He just needs love and patience. Megan nodded, biting her lip hard to keep her emotions down. Then I'll give him both. Over the next week, Chance barely moved. He ate in small, cautious bites. He wouldn't play, wouldn't bark, wouldn't interact with toys. Megan spent hours beside him each day, reading to him in a soft voice, letting Luna sit nearby so he could feel the energy of another calm dog. It was Luna, in fact, who first made a breakthrough. One morning, Megan walked into the living room to find Chance's nose pressed gently against Luna's paw. He wasn't shaking as badly, just a light tremor. Luna didn't move. She just stayed there, eyes half closed, letting him be close. And Megan cried. She knelt beside him and whispered, "You're still in there, aren't you?" Day by day, Chance took small steps. He began to follow Luna's movements with his eyes, then tentatively he stood to follow her. His steps were shaky, his muscles weak, but he moved. When Megan held a soft rubber ball out to him, he sniffed it, looked at her for a long moment, and then, barely, his tail twitched once. It was enough to make her heart leap. He still didn't bark, still didn't wag fully, still flinched if someone sneezed too loudly or dropped a spoon in the kitchen. But he was trying, and for Megan, that meant everything. Late one night, while Megan was watching TV on the couch with Luna beside her, Chance slowly made his way over and curled up at her feet. When her hand drifted down to stroke his head, she braced for him to flinch, but he didn't. Instead, he looked up at her and blinked slowly. It wasn't trust yet, but it was the beginning of it. Weeks passed like quiet winds, barely perceptible on the surface, yet beneath something was changing. Chance was changing, slowly, painfully, but steadily. Megan had created a ritual for him. Every morning she opened the curtains in her living room so the sunlight would fall on his bed. He seemed to like it, lying there with the light warming his fur as though he were trying to thaw not just his bones, but whatever remained of his broken spirit. Each day Megan would sit beside him with a cup of tea, reading aloud from a novel or humming softly. It was routine. It was predictability. And for a dog who had known only chaos, it was everything. Chance still flinched when someone knocked at the door. Still refused to enter the hallway unless Luna led the way first. Still turned his head slowly, shakily, as though expecting the worst. But something was different in his eyes now. They weren't as hollow. There was a flicker behind them, a question maybe, a quiet hope. The turning point came unexpectedly one afternoon. Megan had taken both dogs to a quiet field just behind the vet clinic. It was fenced in and secluded, a safe haven. She sat on the grass, a tennis ball in her hand, tossing it gently for Luna. The golden retriever bounded back and forth with carefree joy, panting and barking, glancing occasionally at Chance as if trying to coax him to join. Chance sat stiffly near Megan. His head still trembled when he looked side to side, but there was curiosity in his gaze as he watched Luna chase the ball. He shifted forward slightly, then back, forward again. Megan noticed. "It's okay, buddy," she said softly, offering him a small smile. "You don't have to run, just watch. Be here." Luna dropped the ball at Megan's feet, tail wagging expectantly. Megan picked it up again and tossed it farther this time. Luna took off in a golden blur. Then something happened. As Luna ran, Chance let out a soft, high-pitched sound. Not quite a bark, not quite a whine. Just a breathy little yip. Megan turned to look at him. Chance took one uncertain step forward. Then two. His legs were awkward, like he was still learning how to use them. His gait wasn't smooth. His trembling neck twitched as he tried to follow the ball's arc with his eyes. But he kept walking. 10 steps. 15. And then, he ran. It wasn't fast, it wasn't graceful. But Chance ran toward Luna, his ears back, tongue out, as though something inside him had finally remembered what it meant to want. Luna stopped halfway back with the ball and turned in surprise. Seeing Chance coming, she dropped the ball and let out an excited bark. They met in the middle of the field, two souls intersecting at the point between healing and instinct. Megan watched through tears as Chance nudged the ball with his nose, looked up at Luna and let his tail wag. Once. Then again. It was the first time he'd wagged it fully. Megan fell to her knees and sobbed into her hands. Later that evening, Megan lit a candle in her living room. She did this often now, not for herself, but for Chance. It was a small flame in a glass holder placed gently near his bed. A symbol, perhaps, of warmth, of resilience, of the fact that even the smallest spark could light up the darkest spaces. Chance was curled up beside Luna, their bodies touching ever so slightly. Megan took a seat beside them on the floor. "I'm proud of you, baby," she whispered, stroking his back. He didn't flinch. He leaned into her touch, just a little. The next few days were filled with more small miracles. Chance began to eat without being coaxed. He started walking around the house on his own. When Megan introduced him to a stuffed toy shaped like a fox, he carried it to his bed and kept it tucked beneath his paw as he slept. But with progress came new challenges. One night, a thunderstorm rolled in unexpectedly. The first crack of thunder shook the windows. Megan in the kitchen dropped a plate. Chance screamed. It wasn't just a whimper or a yelp. It was a guttural, terrified sound that rose from his belly and ripped through the house. Megan ran to him, her heart shattering. He had backed into the corner of the living room, eyes wide with terror, body pressed flat to the ground. His neck trembled violently, his chest heaved with shallow breaths. No, baby, it's okay, you're safe." Megan dropped to the ground beside him, ignoring the broken plate, the storm, everything. She wrapped her arms around his shaking form and rocked him gently. "It's just thunder. It can't hurt you here, I won't let it." He stayed frozen for nearly an hour, even as the storm passed. Megan held him the entire time. The past wasn't gone. It lingered. It haunted. But it didn't have to win. The following morning, Megan called Dr. Camilla. "I think it's time we talk about long-term therapy for trauma, emotional support, maybe even a canine behaviorist." Camilla agreed. "He's a fighter, Megan. He deserves every chance." When Megan hung up the phone, she turned to Chance. "You hear that? We're going to get you help. The kind that understands what your heart's been through." He blinked at her, slowly. Then, to her surprise, he got up, walked over to his fox toy, picked it up and brought it to her feet. Another first, she knelt. "For me?" Chance dropped it, then pressed his head gently against her arm. It wasn't trembling, not this time. And in that moment, Megan knew something profound. Healing wasn't linear. It was messy, unpredictable, and sometimes achingly slow. But it was happening. Chance had walked out of hell and into her home. And now, slowly but surely, he was walking into the light. It was a crisp Saturday morning when Megan woke up to the soft tapping of paws outside her bedroom door. The sound had become familiar over the past few weeks, a kind of gentle announcement that Chance was awake and waiting for her. She smiled, rolled out of bed and opened the door. There he was. Chance stood quietly in the hallway, ears slightly perked, his fox toy dangling from his mouth. His eyes held a spark, a hesitant joy, as if he was still unsure whether he was allowed to feel it. But Megan saw it clearly. "You ready for the park, sweet boy?" she whispered. He gave a small tail wag. Not the frantic kind most dogs give when they hear walk, but a reserved, controlled one, as if he was still learning how to express happiness. It was their weekend tradition now. A visit to the enclosed park on the outskirts of town, a place where Chance could roam freely with Luna. The space was quiet, surrounded by tall trees, and rarely visited by others. It had become their sanctuary. Megan clipped on their leashes and opened the front door. The wind was cool and carried the earthy scent of dew and fallen leaves. Autumn was arriving in full. As they walked down the path, Megan noticed something new. Chance wasn't hesitating at each corner. He wasn't constantly glancing behind him. His steps were more confident, and his head, though still occasionally twitching, seemed steadier. They reached the park gate, and Megan unlatched both leashes. Luna shot off like a bullet toward the nearest tree, barking playfully. Chance stood still for a moment, watching her. Then, for the first time ever, he trotted ahead of Megan, ears forward. He didn't wait for reassurance. He didn't look back. It was the breakthrough Megan had dreamed of but hadn't dared to expect. She sat down on her favorite bench beneath the oak tree. From there, she watched Chance as he explored. The grass sniffed the base of trees and even chased Luna for a few strides before flopping down with a satisfied huff. His body moved with more fluidity now, like the weight he carried inside was finally lifting. Dr. Camilla had told her it might take months, maybe even years, for the trauma to fade. Some scars might never leave, but looking at Chance now, Megan felt something profound settle in her chest. He was healing. He was winning. About an hour later, as they headed back home, Megan's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and saw a name she hadn't expected. Officer Reyes, a K-9 unit supervisor she'd contacted weeks ago to learn more about Chance's past. "Hello?" she answered. "Megan, hi. Sorry to call out of the blue, I just wanted to give you an update. We looked deeper into Chance's file after you reached out. Turns out he was part of a batch of K-9 trainees that were being pushed through too fast. The officer assigned to him was reprimanded. It seems Chance was deemed too slow to learn after only a few sessions and was punished. Repeatedly." Megan's hand clenched around the leash. "I'm so sorry, Megan," the officer continued. "They failed him, but I'm glad he found someone who didn't." She swallowed hard, her throat tightening. "Thank you for letting me know." That night, Megan sat down with Chance in the living room, Luna curled up beside them. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small navy blue vest. The stitching read, "In training, therapy dog." It was time. Megan had already begun the paperwork and evaluations. Chance had come so far. His bond with people was cautious but kind, and his empathy, his sensitivity to emotion, was undeniable. What if his trauma could be turned into something beautiful? What if he could be the one to comfort others now? She draped the vest over his back. At first, Chance froze, his eyes widened, his breath quickened. Megan sat still, whispering gently, "It's not the same, sweet boy. It's different now. No one will ever hurt you again. You're not a failure, you're hope, you're healing." And after a long, tense minute, Chance did something Megan would remember for the rest of her life. He took a single step toward her, then nudged her hand with his nose. A yes. The next few weeks were filled with training sessions and carefully planned introductions. Chance visited the clinic where Megan worked and slowly acclimated to seeing people: nervous kids, elderly patients, anxious teens. At first, he kept his distance, his eyes always flicking back to Megan for reassurance. But then came a visit from a young boy named Jonah. Jonah had lost his mother recently and hadn't spoken in days. His father brought him in for an emotional support evaluation, but the boy refused to look at anyone until Chance entered the room. Megan led him in gently, keeping her voice low. Jonah sat curled in the corner of the exam room, hugging a worn-out stuffed bear. His face was pale, eyes puffy from crying. Chance stopped halfway across the room, stared at the boy, and slowly stepped forward. He dropped his fox toy beside Jonah. Jonah looked up. His lip trembled. And then, without a word, he reached out and touched Chance's fur. He didn't cry. He smiled. The first smile his father had seen in weeks. Megan stepped back, her own eyes misting. Chance had found his purpose, not as a police dog, not as a protector of streets, but as a guardian of hearts. That night, Megan lit 2 candles, one for the Chance who had once been broken, and one for the Chance who had chosen love. even when the world had given him every reason to fear it. As he, curled up beside her, fox toy between his paws, Megan whispered, "You're not stupid, you're a miracle." And for the first time, she swore she saw him smile back. A gentle snowfall blanketed the town the morning of the ceremony. The streets were quiet, still touched by the early frost, and the trees shimmered under a thin crust of ice. Megan adjusted her scarf as she stood by the courthouse steps, holding a navy blue vest in her hands. The same one Chance had worn for the last several months, now decorated with a gold patch stitched above the words, "Certified Therapy Dog." People had gathered not because Chance was famous, or because Megan had told his story to the world, but because of something deeper. Word had spread through hospitals, shelters, schools, and even local news. A dog once discarded and broken was now a beacon of healing. A child who hadn't spoken in months had whispered "doggy" when he touched Chance's fur. An elderly veteran had held Chance and cried into his neck after years of keeping everything inside. A teenager suffering from anxiety said Chance made her feel safe for the first time in forever. And yet for Megan, none of those moments compared to the quiet ones at home. When Chance would crawl onto the couch beside her and press his forehead gently into her chest, when he stopped flinching at the sound of a door, when he finally started wagging his tail, freely, without fear. Today's ceremony wasn't about medals or accolades. It was about closure, about honoring resilience. The mayor, a kind-hearted woman named Evelyn Marks, had insisted on hosting it herself. Megan stood at the center stage with Chance sitting at her feet, ears perked, head steady. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mayor Marks began, her voice carrying through the chilly air, "today we are gathered to recognize a hero, not one who charged into battle or apprehended criminals, but one who endured pain most of us can't imagine, and came out the other side not bitter, but gentle." There was a hush. Megan bent down and gently fastened the special collar around Chance's neck. It had a small tag shaped like a heart, engraved with just 2 words, "You matter." "He taught us something powerful," the mayor continued, her eyes damp. "That broken doesn't mean worthless. That love can rebuild what cruelty tried to destroy, and that sometimes the quietest souls make the loudest difference." There was a soft round of applause, not wild or thunderous, but respectful, like a collective acknowledgement of something sacred. Later that day, after the crowd had dispersed and the snow had thickened, Megan and Chance returned to the trail, behind their home. It had become their ritual, a place of stillness, reflection, healing. But today, Megan carried something new. She walked to the base of a tree, where she had placed a small stone bench. On it, she had engraved a message in soft, swirling script, to the dogs who never gave up, and to the people who believed they could still be saved. Chance sat beside her, his breath rising like wisps in the cold air. He looked up at the bench, then at Megan. His gaze had changed over the months. It was no longer uncertain or broken. It was deep, aware. She sat down beside him and opened the small leather journal she kept with her. She had written about Chance every day since he arrived. The first flinch, the first bath, the first wag, the nightmares, the victories, the setbacks, the miracle. And now, she wrote one final entry. "To my brave boy, you were never stupid. You were hurt, you were scared, but you were always brilliant in ways this world didn't yet understand. They broke you, but you didn't stay broken. You chose love, you chose me, and I will spend every day reminding you, you matter, not because you work, not because you perform, but because you are you, and that is enough." As she finished writing, a soft snowflake landed on the page and melted instantly, smearing the ink just slightly. Megan smiled. It felt poetic. She turned to Chance, scratched behind his ears, the spot he now loved the most, and whispered, "Let's go home." But Chance didn't move right away. Instead, he stepped forward and placed one paw gently on the bench. Then he looked up at her again, as if to say, "I remember. I honor them too." Back at home, Megan laid a fire in the fireplace and curled up with a blanket on the couch. Chance jumped up beside her, curled his body around her legs, and rested his head on her lap. The warmth between them was no longer just about comfort. It was connection, healing, forgiveness. There was a knock at the door. Megan stood up, slightly startled, and opened it to find Dr. Camilla smiling in the evening snow. "I just wanted to see him one more time before I left for my new clinic," she said. Megan nodded and stepped aside. Dr. Camilla knelt down, extended her hand slowly. "Hey there, hero." Chance stepped forward without hesitation, tail softly wagging. "No flinch," she said, eyes wide. "You really did it, Megan." "No," Megan whispered, her voice cracking. "He did it. I just walked beside him." As Camilla left, Megan looked back at Chance, now settled once again on the couch. The fire crackled, casting soft orange light across his fur. His eyes closed, and for a brief moment his legs twitched as if he were dreaming. Megan imagined he was running in a field. Free, fast, fearless. Maybe, just maybe, he was. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share this video with someone who needs a little hope today. And if you believe in the power of second chances, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories that prove love can heal even the deepest wounds.